it wants you to simplify. So the first one, you were just simplifying it from that fraction. As a fraction, it was 21 over 50, or as a decimal, 0.42. The second one just wanted you to multiply. That moved the decimal place over 2 places. Solving for x, the first one you should have divided by 0.3. You would get 30. And the second one, divide by 60, and you would get either 1/4 or 0.25. 0.25. So for this one, you're going to take that 60 and divide both sides by the 60. So you get x equals 15 over 60. And then 15 actually goes into both of these, which reduces to 1/4, or if you did it as a decimal, you would get 0.25. Okay. The first thing you look at here when you come to this page is the definition of a percent. A percent is technically a ratio. That's why percentages are in this chapter. We've been talking about ratios for the first 3 sections. It's a ratio, but this is a specific ratio. It compares a number to 100, okay? And so the symbol that you hopefully are familiar with is those 2 little circles with a dash in between it, okay, which kind of looks like a fraction, right? And so all of your percentages are actually fractions, that number compared to 100. Okay, and so we're going to be doing converting between some percentage and fractions and decimals and kind of back and forth and around. All right, so let's look at this first example. It says write 82% as a fraction and as a decimal. So first of all, the decimal is really easy. When you are given a percentage and they want it as a decimal, you are technically multiplying by 100. Are dividing by 100, okay? And so when you divide by 100, all you do is move your decimal place over 2 places to the left. So if I want to write this as a decimal, I'm going to take my 82% and I am going to say, where's the decimal? Well, the decimal technically for this guy is right here. If you don't see one, it's at the very end. And if I want to convert 82% to a decimal, I just move it 2 places to the left. And so 82% as a decimal is going to be 0.82. So that one's easy. Now it wants it as a fraction. Now remember, as a fraction, we want it in simplest form. So as a fraction, we are going to put it always, 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 whatever number they give you as a percentage, it is a ratio between that number and 100. So this is always where you start, that number over 100. If you can reduce, you will reduce. And so there is a number that goes into both of these. What is it? 2. So divide the top and the bottom by that 2, and you will get 41 over 50. And that's actually as small as you can get this. So as a fraction, 41 over 50. As a decimal, 0.82. Basically what they're doing is they are giving us all different types. They're giving us a percentage, and you're converting it to the other 2. They're giving us a fraction, you're converting it to the other 2. They're giving us a decimal, and you're going to convert it to the other 2, okay? And so on a quiz or test for me, I'm going to give you different numbers, and I'm going to say convert to whichever one you don't have between a decimal, a fraction, and a percentage. All right, so in this case, they gave us a fraction. Now, if this is a simple fraction like 3/5, sometimes you can see that 5 goes into 120 times, and you can say that this is going to be 60 over 100, and so it's 60%, right? So sometimes we can get these easy ones in our head. Sometimes you can't. And so the rule, how do I convert this to a decimal or to a percentage, is to divide, okay? And so I really want to divide the numerator by the denominator, which obviously we're going to get a decimal here because this doesn't divide evenly. And so to change it to a decimal, which it's usually easiest to change to a decimal first when you're dividing, you technically do your long division, right? And so you divide your 3 by your 5. And this is how you do the process. Now again, 3/5 is an easy one because 5 goes into 100. But if it's not an easy one like this, you're going to have to do long division. And so when you do long division, don't forget you have a decimal right here at the end, which means that decimal goes up there. And you say, well, 5 doesn't go into 3, right? So what do I have to do with long division? I have to put what there? A 0. 5 goes into 30 how many times? So as a decimal, this guy is 0.6 because I'm actually done, right? 30, I'm going to get a 0. I'm done. If I didn't get a 0 as a remainder, I would add another 0 and I would keep going. Now, percentage. When I converted from percent to decimal, I moved it 2 places to the left because I divided by 100. When I go from decimal to percent, I multiply by 100. So that means I take that decimal and I move it 2 places to the right. So I'm going to say, well, here's my decimal, 1, 2. What happens when I have a little spot? What am I going to fill it with? A 0. So as a percentage, this is 60%. So here is my decimal. Here's my percentage. Now another way to do this, and I'm just going to show you because 3/5 is a pretty one. 3/5 as a fraction is going to equal what over 100? Well, there's 2 ways to do this. You could cross multiply like we've been doing, right? 3 times 100 equals 5x, and you'll get 60, okay? Or you can say, how many times do I multiply 5 by to get 100? Well, I multiply it by 20, right? So 3 over 5 equals 60 over 100, which lo and behold is 60%, right? Does that make sense? And 60 100ths in decimal form is 0.6. So this is the other thing they can give you. They could give you the decimal and they say, write this as a percent and write this as a fraction, all right? Now, as a percent, it's very, very easy. Remember, as a percent, I'm going to multiply by 100, which means it's going to move it 2 places to the right. 1, 2. So as a percent, this is 155%. Okay? As a fraction, well, as a fraction, it is that percent always over 100. So I can take that 155 and I can put it over 100. What number goes into both of those?
5.
Yeah, 5 goes into both of them. 5 goes into 155 how many times? Into 15 it goes 3 times, and into 5 1 time. 5 goes into 100 how many times?
20.
Yeah, 20 times. And that's as small as you can get that guy. That is my fraction. That is my percentage. All right. Any questions? Questions? So when you have percent equations, you basically have 3 different things going on. The percent is the whole is equal to the part, okay? So you have a percent, whole, and part, okay? And so whatever you're missing is what you're going to solve for. And there's actually 2 ways to do this, and I'm going to show you both ways to do it, all right? So the first way to do it is just to convert it to an equation, all right? It says, what percent? Do I know this? No, the word what indicates that I don't. So that is going to be a variable. All right. The word of in these always means multiplication. So times. All right. 85. Well, that's easy. That means 85, right? That's not hard. We're going to leave him as a number. Is always means equals. Okay. And then, of course, we again have 17, which we leave as 17. So the first way you can do this is just write an equation. How would I write x times 85? What's the best way to write that? 85x is equals 17. And then I have this pretty basic equation. How do I solve this pretty basic equation? Divide. I'm going to divide both sides by 85. And I'm going to get x equals 17 over 85. But I am looking for specifically a percent. Is this written as a percent? It is not. How do I convert it to a percent? Well, I need to convert it to a decimal and move it over, right? How do I convert it to a decimal? Well, thankfully, your teacher gave you a calculator, and you are going to, in your calculator, say 17 divided by 85. And what do you get when you do 17 divided by 85? Yeah, so you get 0.2. Is this as a percentage? No. What do I need to do to make it a percentage? Move it over. 1, 2. It is 20%. And that is my answer, 20%. That is the first way to do it, okay? I'm going to show you a second way to do it. All right? So, the second way to do it is to set up a ratio. So it says, what percent of 85 is 17? So we have a percent, and then we have a part and a whole, okay? The percent is written out, right? This guy represents the percent. Of always tells you where to find the whole. The whole is 85. So whatever comes after that of is going to be the whole part of it. And this guy that's left over, well, that is your part. All right? Now this works out a little differently. The percent is always a fraction with what is my denominator? What's my denominator in percentages? It's always 100, right? Percent is comparing a number to 100. So what percent looks like this? X over 100. Okay? And that equals my part over my whole. So it's always going to be percent over 100 equals part over whole. And you can solve it this way. We know how to solve ratios, cross multiplication, right? And you can say 85 times x equals 17 times 100. Now here's the thing. When you do it like this, it will be in percentage. You don't have to convert it to a percentage, right? So when you do 1700 divided by that 85, you're going to get 20. It is already in percent when you do it with ratios, okay? When you do it like this, you're going to have to move a decimal, either at the beginning or the end. But both ways will get you 20%, okay? You can set up an equation or you can set up equivalent ratios. Some people like it one way, some people like it another. I typically do an equation because it's just faster to me. But some people really like the ratios, and they always know percent over 100 equals part over whole. All right, and they do ratios. What is 45% of 236? So let's write this out as an equation. I'm going to put something here for the word what. What am I going to put for the word what? A variable, x, that's equals. Of is multiplication. Now, here's the trick when it's like this. When they give you the percentage, you need to change it to a decimal first, all right? Because we don't multiply by percentages. We multiply by fractions or decimals, okay? So how do I convert this guy to a decimal? Move it over 2 places to the left. So what is this going to be? 0.45. Of is going to be my multiplication, right? We'll just put a T, well, we'll just do a dot there so we don't confuse ourselves. And then 236 is just a number. Well, this guy's going to be easy to solve. How do I solve for x? Well, I just multiply 0.45 and 236. What do I get when I multiply 0.45 times 236? Round it to 1 decimal place if it doesn't round. 0.45 times 236. What do you get? 106.2. 106.2. All right. So if I set this up as a ratio, it's always my percent over 100. What is my percent? 45, right? Over 100 equals, the whole is after the word of. What is my whole? 236, which means my part is what I don't know. Okay? And you could solve it by cross multiplication if you wanted to. Percentage over 100 equals part over whole, or set it up as an equation and solve. 78 is 130% of what number? All right? So we're going to set it up as an equation. 78, well, that is just a number. That's going to be equals. Is always equals. How do I write 130% as a decimal?
1.30.
Yeah, so 1.30. Move it over two places. Of, that's my multiplication. What number? What do you think I'm going to put there? X. So 1.30 times x. How do I solve for x here? Yeah, I'm going to divide both sides by that 1.30. In your calculators, 78 divided by 1.30 equals what? Equals 60. If you did this as a ratio, it's always percent over 100 equals, what's after the of? Well, my variable is after the of. So the whole goes on bottom, the part goes on top. And you could do it as a ratio. All right. So it says, practical problems involve percentages. Remember to convert a percent to an equivalent decimal or fraction, because again, we cannot multiply by percentages. We multiply by decimals or fractions. So it says, how many gallons of 2% milk does it take to yield 1 gallon of butter fat? All right, so what are they saying? Well, 2% milk, 2% of the milk is going to be the fat. That's what it means when you have 2% milk. 2% of it's fat, right? So do we know the milk amount? Well, no, it says how many gallons of milk. So my variable is going to go right here. Do we know how much fat we want? Yeah, it tells us, right? We want 1 gallon of fat, all right? So we are going to set up an equation. 2%. How do I write that as a decimal? Here's my decimal, right? Yeah, so I'm going to move it over. Here's my decimal. I'm going to put a 0 there. So 0.02 of, that means what? Multiplication. X, so times X is, what does that mean? Equals 1. How do I solve this? Divide both sides by what? 0.02. Do 1 divided by 0.02. A lot of gallons of milk to get.
50.
Yeah, 50 gallons. So in order to get 1 gallon of butterfat, I have to have 50 gallons of 2% milk. All right? Does everybody see how we set that up? All right. So it says Miss Grandy received 17,490 of the 31,800 votes cast in the election. What percent of the votes did she receive? And assuming she needed more than half, did she win the election? All right. So they're saying, well, 17,490 is what percent? We need to know the percent of the total number of votes available. Right? That's what we want to know. 17,490. What am I going to replace this with? Equals. This is going to be replaced with? A variable. And then we have that. How do I solve? It's being multiplied, so what do I need to do? Divide. What is 17,490 divided by 31,800? Round it to 2 decimal places. 2 decimal places.
0.56.
All right. Is that percentage? No. It says what percent did she receive? Convert it to percent by doing this. So it's 55%. Assuming she needed more than 50, did she win? Yeah.